December 10th, 1944, Camp Como, Mississippi. Margaret Weiss stared at the metal tray in front of her, her hands trembling so violently she nearly dropped her fork. An 8-ounce slab of beef sat steaming before her, charred black on the outside, pink in the center, flanked by mashed potatoes drowning in real butter. For 3 years as a Wehrmacht communications operator, she had survived on sawdust bread and turnip soup. Now, as one of fewer than 2,000 German women held in American prisoner of war camps, she faced a meal that would have graced the table of a Reichsmarshal. Around her, 127 other German women sat frozen in equal disbelief. These were nurses captured in Italy, radio operators seized in France, administrative personnel taken during the collapse of Army Group Center. Women who had witnessed the gradual starvation of the German war effort now confronted portions that could have fed their entire families for a week. The aroma of grilled meat filled the mess hall like a ghost from another lifetime. And in that moment, staring at abundance beyond comprehension, Margaret realized something that would haunt her forever. Everything the Reich had told them about American weakness was a lie. The journey to this revelation had begun months earlier, across battlefields that stretched from the Gothic Line to the Ardennes. By late 1944, the German food distribution system had deteriorated into organized famine. Civilian women in Berlin received 1,200 calories daily if they were fortunate. Military personnel, supposedly guaranteed adequate rations, rarely saw half their promised allowance. In the field hospitals and communications centers where these women had served, meals consisted of watery soup made from potato peels, bread that was more sawdust than grain, coffee brewed from roasted acorns. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story of history that Hollywood forgot, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss these untold tales. And drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. We love hearing from our community around the world. Anna Richter, a surgical nurse captured during the Gothic Line offensive in Italy, had kept a medical diary that survived in her personal effects. Her final entry before capture revealed the biological collapse of German military medicine. November 20th, 1944. Performed 3 amputations today without anesthetic. No morphine for 6 weeks. The medical staff has lost an average of 30 pounds. Sister Greta fainted during surgery from malnutrition. We are eating the patient's rations because they are dying anyway. The medical supplies consist of paper bandages and hope. When these women surrendered or were captured across various European theaters, they expected execution or at minimum starvation in Allied prison camps. Nazi indoctrination had prepared them for American brutality against the master race. Instead, within hours of processing, they encountered something that defied comprehension. American K rations distributed at collection points contained more nutrition than they had consumed in months. Real chocolate, processed meat that was actually meat, crackers without weevils, instant coffee that tasted like coffee. The journey to America aboard converted Liberty ships provided the first systematic contradiction of everything they believed about American industrial capacity. These vessels, which German naval intelligence had declared impossible to produce at reported rates, transported up to 15,000 prisoners monthly across the Atlantic. The women discovered that merchant sailors consumed fresh vegetables, real coffee with cream, meat at every meal. They watched in stunned silence as American crew members discarded barely touched food, entire meals going overboard without thought. Margaret Weiss, who would later document her experience in letters to her sister, wrote about the crossing with the precision of someone recording an impossible dream. The American sailors complained about having chicken 3 days in a row. Chicken. We had not seen chicken in 2 years, and they were bored by it. One sailor threw a chocolate bar into the ocean because it had melted slightly in his pocket. We fought each other to retrieve it before it sank. Their casual waste revealed resources beyond German comprehension. Norfolk Naval Base provided the second revelation. As the women disembarked in January 1945, they encountered an America that Nazi propaganda had declared impossible. Female dock workers whom German ideology had deemed suitable only for domestic duties operated complex machinery while consuming sandwiches thick with meat and cheese. They drank Coca-Cola from glass bottles and discarded them without concern for rationing. African-American supervisors, supposedly inferior according to Nazi racial theory, directed white workers with authority and competence that challenged every assumption about racial hierarchy. The medical processing station delivered another shock. Each German woman received a comprehensive health examination that revealed the extent of their nutritional collapse. Average weight was 25% below normal. Scurvy, pellagra, and beriberi diseases of severe malnutrition were endemic among the group. American military physicians, including Jewish doctors who had fled Germany in the 1930s, treated these conditions without hatred or revenge, administering vitamins and nutritional supplements that had been unavailable in Germany for years. Major Sarah Patterson, the chief medical officer at the Norfolk Processing Station, reported conditions that resembled concentration camp victims more than enemy military personnel. These women arrived in a state of systematic starvation. Bleeding gums, night blindness, protein edema conditions we associate with famine, not military service. We immediately implemented graduated feeding protocols to prevent refeeding syndrome. The irony was not lost on us that we were treating German military personnel better than Germany was treating its own people. The train journey to internment camps provided a 3-day immersion in American abundance that would prove more devastating to Nazi ideology than any propaganda campaign. As the trains rolled through Virginia's agricultural heartland, the women pressed against windows. They witnessed endless orchards heavy with apples despite winter, dairy farms with herds of cattle that appeared well fed, and grain silos that towered like cathedrals of abundance. Every small town featured grocery stores with full windows, displaying goods that had vanished from German shelves years earlier, reinforcing the contrast between American plenty and German deprivation. At scheduled stops, the women observed American railroad workers consuming meals that would have been reserved for Nazi Party officials in Germany. Thick sandwiches of ham or beef, fresh fruit, and thermos bottles of real coffee with cream. They smoked cigarettes continuously, stubbing them out half-finished, demonstrating a casual relationship with scarcity German minds could not process. One worker at a Tennessee station threw away an apple because it had a small bruised fruit that would have caused riots in Berlin's bread lines. The American prisoner of war camp system had been designed to house over 400,000 Axis prisoners, with the vast majority being German men. The approximately 2,000 German women represented a unique minority. These women were distributed among specialized facilities in states like Mississippi, Texas, and Oklahoma, chosen for climates similar to their capture locations as required by Geneva Convention guidelines. Camp Como in Mississippi, where Margaret Weiss and her fellow prisoners were housed, had been converted from a standard military training facility. The women discovered amenities that exceeded what most had known as civilians in peacetime Germany. Electric lighting illuminated every building. Hot water flowed from faucets without restriction. Flush toilets and shower facilities provided privacy and cleanliness impossible in field conditions. Central heating maintained comfortable temperatures throughout winter months. Nothing prepared them for their first full meal in the camp mess hall that December evening in 1944. The menu, preserved in military records, documented an abundance that challenged reality itself. Steam tables lined the mess hall, each section containing enough food to supply a Wehrmacht company for days. Grilled steaks, barbecued ribs, fresh vegetables, bread in multiple varieties, and desserts including apple pie and ice cream delivered a final psychological blow. Sitting at tables with real silverware, many wept openly. Others sat in silence, unable to reconcile enemies feeding them better than their own government ever had. The waste disposal revealed perhaps the most shocking aspect of American abundance. Entire portions of barely touched food disappeared into garbage bins without concern. Bread rolls with single bites missing, steaks cut but not finished, vegetables left untouched because prisoners' stomachs, conditioned by years of inadequate nutrition, could not process such rich fare. The American staff treated this waste as inevitable rather than tragic, demonstrating a relationship with scarcity that German minds could not comprehend. Kitchen records documented the daily food requirements that sustained this single camp. 2,000 pounds of meat delivered weekly, 500 gallons of milk consumed daily, fresh produce arriving by railroad car from farms that operated without fear of bombing or requisition. The supply chain that supported this operation stretched across an entire continent, coordinating production from dozens of states to ensure enemy prisoners received better nutrition than German civilians. As the women attempted to consume their portions, physical reactions revealed the extent of their previous deprivation. Rich gravies caused nausea in stomachs accustomed to watery broths. Butter-laden vegetables triggered digestive distress after months of fat-free diets. The sweetness of desserts overwhelmed palates that had forgotten the taste of sugar. Many could finish only portions of their meals, their bodies rejecting abundance after adapting to starvation. Medical staff monitored these feeding sessions with scientific interest, documenting the physiological impact of transitioning from malnutrition to adequate nutrition. Weight gain averaged 2 pounds per week during the first month of captivity. Scurvy symptoms disappeared within days of vitamin C consumption through fresh vegetables. Night blindness resolved as vitamin A deficiency was corrected through dairy products and yellow vegetables that had been unavailable in Germany for years. The evening concluded with coffee service that delivered another cultural shock. Real coffee brewed from beans rather than acorn substitutes, served with cream and sugar available without restriction. The aroma alone triggered memories of peacetime cafes and family gatherings that seemed impossibly distant. American guards consumed this coffee casually throughout their shifts, treating as routine what had become the most precious commodity in wartime Germany. As the women returned to their barracks that first evening, conversations began that would continue throughout their captivity and influence their worldviews for decades afterward. How could America maintain such abundance while simultaneously fighting enemies across multiple continents? What did this reveal about the industrial capacity they had been taught to dismiss as inferior? Most disturbing of all, if America could feed enemy prisoners with such generosity, what did that suggest about the true balance of power in this war? Margaret Weiss lay on her cot that first night, staring at the ceiling while her stomach churned from rich food her body had forgotten how to process. Around her, 127 other German women faced the same terrifying revelation. Everything they had believed about American weakness was crumbling with each satisfied bite they had forced down their throats. In the darkness, whispered conversations began to reshape their understanding of the world. Anna Richter, the captured surgical nurse, spoke first. If they can feed us like nobility while their own men fight and die overseas, what does that say about their resources? Her voice carried the clinical precision of someone accustomed to documenting impossible medical cases, but now she was documenting the impossible abundance of their captors. Gertrude Hoffmann, a communications specialist who had coordinated supply lines across the collapsing Eastern Front, possessed intimate knowledge of German resource limitations. She had spent months requisitioning equipment that never arrived, requesting ammunition that didn't exist, pleading for medical supplies that had been consumed by higher priority units. Now she calculated American logistics with the same methodical approach she had once applied to German shortages. They served us 8 ounces of beef per person. Our entire communications battalion received less meat in a month than this camp consumes in a single evening. The second day brought breakfast that continued their education in American industrial might. The mess hall opened at 0630 hours with military precision, but the abundance remained staggering. Scrambled eggs prepared with real butter sat alongside bacon that sizzled with fat content that would have been impossible to obtain in Germany. Fresh orange juice squeezed from fruit that traveled thousands of miles from Florida groves provided vitamin C that had vanished from German diets when citrus imports ceased. Pancakes appeared in stacks, each one larger than the daily bread ration German civilians received when fortunate. Maple syrup flowed freely, a luxury product that demonstrated America's capacity to allocate agricultural resources to pleasure rather than mere survival. The syrup alone represented sugar consumption that exceeded monthly German civilian allowances. Yet it was provided without measurement or restriction to enemy prisoners. But it was the American women serving the meals who delivered perhaps the most devastating blow to Nazi ideology. These were not the weak, pampered creatures that German propaganda had depicted. They were competent professionals who managed complex food service operations while maintaining military discipline. They operated industrial kitchen equipment with expertise, coordinated supply chains that spanned continents, and demonstrated organizational skills that exceeded what many German officers had achieved. Sergeant Mary O'Sullivan, the head of food services, supervised meal preparation with efficiency that impressed even critical German observers. She managed inventory systems that tracked thousands of individual items, coordinated delivery schedules that ensured fresh ingredients arrived daily, and maintained quality standards that treated prisoner meals as worthy of professional attention. Her casual competence challenged every assumption about female capabilities that Nazi ideology had promoted. The serving line conversations revealed American attitudes that contradicted German expectations about racial hierarchy and social organization. African American kitchen staff worked alongside white personnel without the segregation and hostility that German prisoners expected. They demonstrated technical expertise with complex equipment, supervised white subordinates when rank demanded, and maintained professional relationships that defied Nazi theories about racial incompatibility. Private Dorothy Washington, who operated the industrial dishwashing system, managed equipment more sophisticated than anything the German women had encountered in military service. She maintained precise temperatures, coordinated chemical sanitization processes, and processed hundreds of dishes per hour with mechanical precision. Her expertise challenged assumptions about racial capabilities while demonstrating American technological advancement that rendered German military equipment primitive by comparison. The food itself continued to educate German prisoners about American agricultural capacity through variety that exceeded their comprehension. Each meal featured multiple options that demonstrated surplus production across diverse climate zones. Tropical fruits appeared alongside temperate vegetables. Dairy products from northern states combined with grain products from prairie regions. The coordination required to deliver this variety to a single military facility revealed logistical capabilities that dwarfed German achievements. Lunch service introduced the German women to American casual dining concepts that challenged their understanding of military food preparation. Hamburgers, unknown in German cuisine, demonstrated American innovation in combining multiple food groups into convenient forms. The ground beef patties contained more meat than German soldiers received weekly. Fresh lettuce, tomatoes, and onions provided vegetables that had disappeared from German markets. Cheese slices represented dairy production that exceeded German peacetime capacity. As the first week of captivity concluded, the German women faced psychological transformation that would influence their worldviews permanently. The daily experience of American abundance had systematically demolished every assumption they had held about relative national strength, democratic efficiency, and the inevitable triumph of their ideology. They were witnessing the arsenal of democracy, not through military displays, but through the simple act of eating meals that exceeded their most optimistic peacetime memories. The evening meals became laboratories of psychological warfare, more effective than any propaganda campaign. Each dinner delivered evidence that contradicted Nazi teachings about democratic weakness and racial incompetence. The abundance was not propaganda designed to impress prisoners, but routine operation of systems that functioned at this level consistently. American guards confirmed this reality through casual conversations that revealed their own expectations about food quality. By the end of their first month in captivity, the transformation was complete. These women who had believed in German superiority and American decadence now understood the terrible mathematics of industrial warfare. America's 1944 agricultural production exceeded Germany's peacetime output. American steel production was 5 times greater than the Reich's. Oil production was 50 times higher. These numbers, which they had dismissed as enemy propaganda, were visible in every meal, every discarded coffee cup, every casual waste of resources that Germany could never have afforded. Margaret Weiss would later write to her sister about the moment she understood the war's true outcome. It was not in the mess hall or the medical clinic. It was watching an American guard throw away a half-eaten sandwich because he wasn't hungry anymore. In that gesture of casual abundance, she saw the future. Germany had not lost the war on the battlefield. It had lost in the factories, the farms, the oil fields, and the industrial heartland of a nation that could afford to feed its enemies better than the Reich could feed its own people. The approximately 2,000 German women held in American POW camps returned to a devastated homeland, carrying knowledge that would reshape an entire generation's understanding of power. They had witnessed democracy's greatest weapon, not in its bombers or battleships, but in its mess halls. Every steak had been an argument against Nazi ideology. Every barbecued rib had demolished propaganda about American weakness. They came as believers in German superiority and departed as witnesses to abundance beyond imagination. In their transformation lay the seeds of reconciliation and the foundation for lasting peace between former enemies. They would tell their children and grandchildren not about American cruelty, but about American generosity. Not about democratic weakness, but about industrial might beyond comprehension. And in those stories passed down through generations, the true lesson of the Second World War would endure. Victory belonged not to the nation with the strongest ideology, but to the nation with the capacity to feed both its own people and its enemies with equal abundance.